come to it with a general knowledge, but like the people who live next door, the longer you live with them, the more you discover about them, and that's part of the excitement.
I think for the reader and for the writer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
A tip, write it down. If you've decided that your character is 5'2", or you've decided that your character has blue eyes, you should keep a dossier or a file on that character as any characteristics, whatever they are, that get mentioned. I learned just recently that my character, Sean, is very afraid of fire. I had a lot of difficulty writing a scene in which he has to go into a burning building. I remember to put that down, because one of the things that we don't like in when I review books, this is one of the things that bothers me, is when the character starts out in a 1949 Ford and gets out at the end of the scene, gets out of a 1959 Hupmobile.
Happened in Back to the Future, I think. But now, we talked about central characters, but adjunct characters who play a significant role in a particular book, but who may not be back in the next novel. How do you deal with those?
Well, for me, I love the revision process. And when I'm revising a book, I would say 95% of what I do in revisions is I have learned, I have a good sense of the characters when I begin, but I don't know them well.
Right.
And part of learning about a character for me is hearing them speak, and I haven't heard them speak a lot before I start writing. By the end of that book, I know them much better.
So you hear their voices?
I do, yeah.
In distinctly different ways.
Yes, I do. And so when I'm revising a book, a lot of what I'm doing is going back and making those characters consistent all the way through the book with what I have learned about them by writing the book.
Can we get this down to a little bit of the nitty-gritty? What
Sure.
do you consider are the most important characteristics that any character ought to have in a book?
A pulse.
Yeah, I wouldn't know how to answer that.
That's good.
For me, the question is how do you get into building a character, or specifically how do you build a character? And I pretty much do it the same way for every book. I have a theme. I have a title, which is a theme. I have the main characters, and I have a crime. And for me, a crime novel is built around that crime. It's built around the motivations that people might have for committing that crime. And those motivations then take me to a specific character, because I develop the characters around those specific motives, okay? So I'm backing up.
You're deconstructing.
Right. And I name the character. That's a big part of it. I give them a name. I give them a physical presence. I have to decide what they look like. I have to give them a psychological presence. I have to decide, are they bitter? Are they happy-go-lucky? Are they, whatever. And then I start giving them a background. I start thinking. I think of it as going from the elevator from the top floor to the basement with this character. You want to think about who they are, what kind of relationships they've had, what kind of a childhood, work history, what kind of education they've had, and it's like, again, I hate to keep quoting Dennis Lehane, but he said, my character, I know that my character likes mustard. Probably will never enter into a book I write, but it's something that's important to him, and so it's important to me. And he said, you have to really know that character, and I don't know that you can know that character maybe as well as you need to initially, but you get to know that character.
So, but do you think about things like, setting Jane Lawless aside for a moment, do you think about things, or setting Cork aside, the two main, do you think about these characters, look at them, is this character sympathetic, going to come across as sympathetic as I need this character to do? Do you think in those kinds of terms? You see
yes.
Always.
In terms of, do you look at a character, Hercule Poirot, for example, is not a very sympathetic character in a lot of ways. And I'm sure that he was built that way deliberately, don't you think? Do you see what I'm saying? Playing against type?
Perhaps.
Yeah, I don't know what was in Christie's
I can't
mind.
speak for Agatha Christie.
No, of course you can't. But in your own writing, or if you were teaching a course, let's say, and well, how do I, apart from the physical characteristics, what things should I be looking at in terms of this character in order to make the book appealing to an editor?
Do you know, you think about those kinds of things, I mean, you do some of that thinking, but for me, I'm often kind of surprised by the character that ends up being created. I've imagined what the character will be like, but when that character walks on stage in that initial scene, sometimes that character changes.
Absolutely.
And becomes something different than I had imagined. Probably will play the same part in the story, or very often becomes more significant to the story because suddenly this character has assumed much greater dimension.
So you generally agree with that?
Yes.
So you both disagree, I do too, but you both basically disagree with David Housewright, who says, I'm in charge of all of this. These people don't speak to me, I speak to them.
Yeah, I disagree with that.
But he writes very strong, very character-driven.
But I think even David would admit that sometimes you are following the characters a little, that they are doing a little bit of leading, and you let them lead.
And it's fair to say, as we get near the end of this segment, that there's no one way to develop a character.
No.
I think that we should chisel that one in stone.
You know,
Don't be sarcastic.
if we say that there's one way, then here's another tip. Beware of writers bearing tips.
I love it. Absolutely.
What a great note to end on.
Yes.
And that's what we're going to do. We're just going to end here because the program is just about over. Let me remind you that there's a lot more information on our website, and if you missed something that you want more information about, go to our website, www.minnesotacrimewave.org. You'll find lots of links there, and you can subscribe to our occasional newsletter. There's another aspect about this too, and in this program we've mentioned some authors and some books, and we'll have lists available again, and you can find out that information by emailing us at minnesotacrimewave@yahoo.com. So for my friend Ellen and my friend Kent, see you next time, and as always, read more mysteries.